Hi, I'm Marie Gale. Welcome back to the next segment of our class on product labeling with the Nova Studio. In this class, we're going to take a quick look at what's required on all product labels and why it's required. There was a law passed in 1969-ish. It was signed into law by President Johnson. It's called the Fair Packaging and Labeling Act, and it was enacted in order to make sure that consumers could make a good value decision on the products that they were purchasing. Now, apparently at the time, there was some deceptive marketing going on where you had, for example, packages that were big but contained only a little bit of product. The classic, of course, are the cereal boxes where it's a big cereal box but only had a little bit of cereal in it. There were jars that were used for cosmetics that had double or triple walls, so that the jar looked quite big, but the amount of product was very little. So there were a lot of things that were being fairly deceptive. They didn't even have to say at that time how much was in the package. They didn't have to put the net contents on there. So this law was enacted to make it easier for consumers to make a value judgment as to whether or not they wanted to buy the product. Now, Congress enacted that and President Johnson signed it into law, and it's the Fair Packaging and Labeling Act, and it is an overriding law. And off of that come the regulations from the different agencies about what goes on a product label. For example, the Fair Packaging and Labeling Act, they have a set of regulations that applies to the products that they regulate, which includes any kind of consumer products that aren't food, drugs, or cosmetics. So when you buy a package of toilet paper and it says on there how much is in it and what it is and who made it, that comes from the Federal Trade Commission's implementation of that Fair Packaging and Labeling law, Fair Packaging and Labeling Act. For foods, drugs, and cosmetics, the FDA was charged with making the regulations. So when you're making a cosmetic, we look at the regulations that come from the FDA about labeling. And both the sets of regulations and also the ones from the EPA for pesticides, those all come from the Fair Packaging and Labeling Act, which said that certain things were required on the package. The product identity, the net contents, and the business name and address is what they specified should be on the label. The different agencies have implemented regulations that are very similar, but they're not exactly the same. And then there's also states that have taken, there's an entity that made a sample law that covered all of that for the states. So most states also have a law that says what needs to go on a product label. So those basic things are, on the front, it has to have what the product is, that's the product identity, and it has to have the net contents. So you have to say how much is in the package. Then you have to have on the back, you have to have the business name and address of the responsible party. And for cosmetics, you need to have the ingredient declaration. And in most cases, you need to have any material facts. And that means anything that's pertinent to whether or not somebody would want to buy the product. Allergens might be a pertinent fact. If the product is to be used in a tub, like say a sugar scrub that's got an oil base, and somebody's going to use it in the shower or tub, a material fact might be that it makes the tub slippery because an older person buying it, that would be important to them. They might look at it and say, oh, it makes the tub slippery. I better not get that because I don't want to fall down. So anything that's a material fact that would influence whether or not somebody would buy the product. That's separate from marketing information that might make somebody want to buy it. This is something that could sway them particularly either way, because it could say to them, oh, that fact is important and I don't want to do it. So material facts, they're not stated particularly in the regulations. It's kind of roundabout directions, material facts, not being false and misleading, that sort of thing. So those are the basic things that are required on every product label. And in the next segments of this class, we're going to go into dig a deep dive into each one of those things, what it means, how you determine it, where you put it, how big it's got to be, and those different things. But this particular segment gives you a brief overview of what's required on a label. You can go back to it and see if you've got everything on there that you need. And we'll be carrying on with the deep dive into all the pieces in the next segments. Thanks for joining us.